Chapter 366. Unable to leave. Young cultivator, I bear no ill will. I only attacked last time because I wanted to make you stay. The old man's words traveled forward like a straight line in the layer with the high wind. After all, you're our people's deserter. Leaving the battlefield is an act of betrayal. I attacked you because of this as well. As a true divinity, I can give you a chance. Come back with me to Sky Mist City. I promise you, your life won't be in danger. Although the old man had said those words, Su Ming, who was several hundreds of thousands of feet away, did not even turn his head back and continued onward without a single word. The distance between them grew bigger. You may have the power of the god of berserkers, but I'm certain that you don't want to waste the only 2 chances you have. Besides, this is only a clone of mine, and it would be a fortune of mine to be able to experience the power of the god of berserkers' jab with my clone. The old man continued speaking with a dark expression on his face. How about this? I will swear by my statue of the god of berserkers that I won't harm you, but you're not allowed to continue running either. Stay by my side and let me examine the power of the god of berserkers. Don't worry, I won't let you do this for nothing. I'll give you treasures as thanks. The old man was forced to do this. He longed for the power of the god of berserkers, but after going through the life-threatening crisis, he had grown incredibly wary of Su Ming. However, this made him really conflicted, because he was only wary of the power that Su Ming could use twice. He was completely unbothered by Su Ming himself. It was that conflict that made him struggle, caught by his own greed between wanting to chase him down and not at the same time. If he chased him down and forced Su Ming into a corner so he would use one of the chances, then the old man's fate was all but predicted. Yet if he did not chase him down and just gave up like this after chasing for so long and so far into the land of the shamans, he found himself unwilling to accept that outcome. However, even if he continued with the chase, he found it hard to close the distance between them due to the wariness he had in his heart. Once more time passed by and they entered deeper into the land of the shamans, then he would grow more and more uneasy. This sort of dilemma was enough to drive him mad and make him despise Su Ming to the core. Just as the old man was hesitating and chasing him down, Su Ming had already widened the distance between them by more than 500,000 feet while in the high wind. With this sort of distance between them, he could descend without fear and cause a ruckus at a lower altitude as he charged forward. This sort of cycle continued for another 2 days. By then, the ground underneath was no longer grayish-black, and green appeared on the earth, a clear sign that they had moved out of the wastelands and were gradually moving closer to the places where shaman tribes were located. Only then did that old man finally make his decision. He gritted his teeth and came to a halt, as he glared at Su Ming, who was several hundreds of thousands of feet away. Hatred flashed briefly in his eyes, but he turned around and gave up on the chase. Instead, he returned to his original path and charged back. In the end, he still chose to give up. After all, this sort of chase would yield no results. Once he thoroughly weighed out the pros and cons of these 2 difficult situations, he found that unless his power was at the middle stage of the Berserker Soul Realm and possessed an even more powerful divine ability, then he would perhaps stand a better chance at killing Su Ming before he had the chance to activate the power of the god of berserkers. Yet now, he could not do this. That was why, instead of continuing with the chase like this, it was better for him to give up completely. However, right when the old man chose to give up and go back the way he'd come, he found, with a dark expression on his face, that Su Ming had also chosen not to continue with his escape. He was instead following behind him as if he had turned the tables and was now chasing him down. But that was not all. He could have ignored him if that was the case and let Su Ming follow him. He was certain that the youth would not dare return to Sky Mist City. If Su Ming continued following him like this, then before long, he would leave on his own. Besides, if he followed him for a prolonged period of time, then perhaps the old man could have a chance to obtain the power of the god of berserkers. To the old man, this was a good thing. That is, if he did not discount the booming sounds behind him and the words he could hear even from a long distance away. Su Ming's pursuit was followed by intentionally created thunderous booming. Those sounds and the rumbles caused by the occasional punch into the air continued reverberating incessantly in the air. This was the land of the shamans, and there was still quite some distance before he could reach Sky Mist City. If the old berserker was careful, it was possible for him to return quietly, but if such booming continued behind him, then it would be very difficult for him to return safely. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! The old berserker felt as if he was being driven insane. He had already given up on chasing Su Ming down and killing him, but the brat did not even appreciate what was good for him and was instead acting as if he was stuck to the old man, causing his return to be filled with trepidation. The booming was becoming increasingly louder, and the old man did not want to know what would happen if he did not stop Su Ming. The previous few days when he had been chasing the other, these sort of booming sounds had already appeared, and they might have already caught the attention of the shamans. Now, this was also happening on his way back. The old man would definitely not believe that there would be no shamans who would come forth to investigate such a matter. Not only was the old man going crazy from those sounds, they were also becoming a real headache to him. That was why he simply chose to stop once again, change his direction, and resume chasing Su Ming. Yet as he changed his direction, Su Ming also did the same thing in the distance. The two of them resumed the role of the pursuer and the pursued. The only thing that did not change were those booming sounds. They rang in the air and did not fade away. That booming was a noise that made the old man feel incredibly agitated when he heard it, but also fearful at the same time. Even if he was the pursuer, he also had to pay a lot of attention to his surroundings, worried that the noise would draw in the attention of the shamans. His current state of mind was just like a person who wanted to move silently in the middle of a night and did not want to be discovered, but there was always loud noises by his side. The old man's eyes turned red. This was the first time he ever became afraid of someone in the bone sacrifice realm, and the reason for it was not because of the power of the god of berserkers Su Ming had, but because of his actions. Those actions made him want to tear his hair off his head. After chasing him for a long while, the old man was just about to let slip a roar out of gloom, but he swallowed it down. He turned his head and gave up on the chase once again, charging at full speed back toward Sky Mist City. Su Ming changed his direction behind him at a leisurely pace and followed behind while creating that booming that shook the sky and earth. If the old man sped up, then Su Ming would also speed up. If he slowed down, then Su Ming would also slow down. If he stopped, then Su Ming would also stop. There was forever several hundreds of thousands of feet between them. I'd like to see just how you'll deal with this once you lure in the shamans. If you, as a berserker in the bone sacrifice realm, am not afraid, then why should I be afraid? The old man's eyes were red by then. He was honestly at the end of his wits due to Su Ming's actions, which was why he decided to simply not think too much about it and charge forward without a word. It was as if he was fueling his speed with all his pent-up gloom and vexation. The two of them moved forward one behind the other. No matter how one thought about it, Su Ming looked as if he was the one chasing down the old man, but the gigantic difference of power between them made this chase seem incredibly weird. A berserker in the middle stage of the bone sacrifice realm was going after the life of a berserker in the initial stage of the berserker soul realm. Once this chase went on for 3 days, due to Su Ming constantly creating booming sounds all over the land of the shamans, he finally caught the attention of those in the shaman tribe. In truth, most of the shamans in that area had gone to war. That was why Su Ming and the old man had not run into shamans trying to stop them during this period of time. That was not to say that the batch of shamans from the battlefield had returned. Su Ming and the old man had instead caught the attention the new batch of shaman warriors who were heading to the battlefield in Sky Mist City. More accurately speaking, this was a migrating tribe. The warriors in the tribe had formed teams to protect their tribe as they moved forward, and at the same time, once the tribe had reached the location that was arranged for them, a large number of their people had to head to the shaman's gathering place located outside Sky Mist City. There were many migrating tribes like these throughout the entire shaman tribe. The tribe Su Ming and the old berserker ran into was one of them. They were formed of black shadows that seemed to have covered the sky. Those shadows were closely packed and numbered to several thousands. Each of the black shadows was a largely shrunken mackerel pike. The large mackerel pike swam through the clouds, and on its back was a shaman warrior. There were also thousands of shamans traveling on the ground, causing the earth to tremble. 9 ferocious beasts that looked like turtles but had square shells and were several tens of thousands of feet in size protected them from behind. There were many shamans sitting on the 9 strange turtles. There were also some buildings that seemed to have been picked off from the ground and placed on the shells. Further behind them was a long string of people forming a team whose end could not be seen as they sent dust flying into the air with their march. This was clearly not the migration of a small tribe, but a shaman tribe leaning on the larger side of the spectrum. There were bound to be powerful end shamans in this sort of tribe. As Su Ming followed after the old berserker as if he was chasing after him, both of them noticed the shamans who had practically blotted out the sky and earth with their numbers coming from the distance. The shamans also saw Su Ming and the old berserker in the distance. In truth, these shamans first heard the booming sounds before they saw Su Ming and the old berserker. Most of them had their eyes trained on the old berserker right from the start because of his incredible power, his uncovered face, and because the shamans could tell that he wasn't a shaman. More importantly, because he was escaping. Fleeing in the direction forward for a berserker in the land of the shamans was something that logical. Hence it was only logical that the person who was chasing after his life was his enemy. And in the land of the shamans, the only people who were against the berserkers were mostly shamans. Besides, Su Ming was wearing a straw hat, and when he'd noticed the group of shamans with his divine sense, he brought out a spirit plunder, but he did not place next to himself. Instead, he held it in his hands. Even so, the unique dark light and power of absorption that came from the pill still spread out, causing the air around Su Ming to look as if it was distorting. Which was why, at first glance, he looked rather similar to the young soul catcher he'd seen previously. There were also Su Ming's words, which were spoken in a hoarse and ghastly voice. "My fellow tribesmen behind me, where are you from? I am Mo Su, a medial soul catcher from Lizard Shaman tribe. Please aid me in killing this person. He is a powerful berserker in the initial stage of the berserker soul realm." The old berserker, who seemed to be fleeing rapidly in front, almost puked blood when he heard those words. He had no time to speak in his mad dash, and as he was running away, he began cursing in his heart. Does he think those shamans are blind? Medial soul catcher, my foot. His thoughts came to an abrupt halt. Chapter 367, Autumn Sea. When Su Ming spoke, a shaman crystal appeared in his left hand. With one squeeze, the crystal instantly shone with a brilliant light. With a flash in the sky, that light turned into a gigantic lizard above Su Ming. That lizard was naturally the sacred beast of Lizard Shaman tribe. There were many uses for shaman crystals. Su Ming had learned from Wu Duo that one of their many uses was a way for shamans to show their tribe's sacred beast as a form of courtesy if they ran into other shamans in an unfamiliar place. In the end, he had chosen not to probe into Wu Duo's origins, but had instead chosen to ask about the shaman's customs and characteristics. Wu Duo had told him everything. He had also somewhat guessed Su Ming's intentions, but he did not expose him because they were people walking down the same path, albeit they were from different races. They perhaps have not had a deep friendship, but after fighting through numerous battles together, they had slowly come to form a unique rapport, and this way they had come to form a friendship between two people of different races. Perhaps it was a brittle friendship, but it might also not be that brittle. At the very least, right now Su Ming was using the method Wu Duo told him to activate the power of the shaman crystal. Once he brought out the illusion of the sacred beast of Lizard Shaman tribe based on what he saw in the past and what he remembered, the shaman tribe that had stirred up the dust on the land and blotted the sky and earth manifested their own in the form of an illusion in the sky. From a shaman crystal, a gigantic and ferocious beast was called out. It was a gigantic mackerel pike, one that Su Ming was familiar with and had seen before. The illusion of the mackerel pike appeared in the sky. Compared to it, the lizard was really insignificant. However, if the tribe revealed the image of the sacred beast, then it meant that they had acknowledged Su Ming's words and had also accepted his exercise of shaman etiquette, which was why they had returned the greeting. The sudden scene caused the fleeing berserker to widen his eyes in disbelief. He had no knowledge of this sort of shaman etiquette. In truth, there were not many people who knew of this sort of etiquette in the land of the shamans, because it was really insignificant. Even if a people could call out sacred beasts, it usually only took one glance for them to recognize whether other people were shamans as well. The most distinct characteristic would be the strength of that person's mental prowess. At that moment, Su Ming had already spread his divine sense so that it covered his entire body. Then, along with the mysterious air spreading from spirit plunder that was hidden from sight in his hand, he gave all those around him a feeling that he was a soul catcher, even though he was wearing a bamboo hat. The old berserker who was running away might not know about this rule of conduct, but he knew that Su Ming was definitely not part of the shaman tribe. When the group of shamans appeared behind him, his skin crawled, but as he continued charging forward, with a sinister intention, he said, "Interesting. Since when has the true divinity Wind Berserker of the Berserker tribe and the scion of the first god of berserkers become a shaman? Why didn't I know about this?" Almost the moment the old man said those words, Su Ming let out a cold harumph. He did not explain himself but loosened the grip of his right hand, causing spirit plunder in his hand to float above his head. It shone with a brilliant dark light as if it wanted to absorb everything in the world into it. Su Ming distinctly remembered that when the young soul catcher he killed in the land of the berserkers saw this pearl, he had said that this was the soul catcher pearl that only End shamans could create. This pearl seemed to be rather famous in the shaman tribe. Besides, Su Ming also remembered that when he brought out his spirit plunder in Lizard Shaman tribe that the patriarch of that tribe had also recognized this as an item that belonged to the shamans, and had been baffled as to why Su Ming could possess and use it. Soul Catcher Pearl. It was just as Su Ming had predicted. The moment the pearl was brought out, someone from the migrating shaman tribe behind them immediately cried out in surprise. The old berserker was stunned, and at that moment, an old woman walked out abruptly from the thousands of mackerel pikes in the sky behind Su Ming. The old woman's hair was white and her skin filled with wrinkles. There was a tattoo of a mackerel pike on her face. She held a cane made of fishbone in her hand, and with one step, she appeared right before Su Ming, several tens of thousands of feet behind the old berserker. She was a latter shaman. Su Ming's pupils shrank under the straw hat covering his head. The instant the old woman walked past him, he could feel a power that was similar to that of a divine sense from the old woman's body, scanning him. There was also a man whose hair was so long it was about 10 feet in length sitting on the head of a turtle located at the center of the 9 turtles on the ground. The man looked to be in his 40s, but there were age spots that only belonged to the elderly covering his skin. He originally had his eyes closed, but at the same time the old woman appeared, he opened his eyes slowly. Within them was a light that could make someone feel shaken to the core. It was just a gaze, but it was enough to make Su Ming's entire body tremble. It also made the old berserker, who was fleeing in front, feel as if his soul was about to scatter. His body suddenly came to a stop, as if he was tied up and could not move forward. End. Soul Catcher. The old berserker's expression turned incredibly sour. He could not move his body at all, as if his soul had been captured. That was not all. He had also lost control of his body and was slowly turning around. Then, like a puppet, he started walking towards the old woman. Terror and shock could be seen clearly in his eyes. "Take off your straw hat." Just as the old berserker started walking over without any form of resistance, as if his body was controlled, the man sitting cross-legged on the turtle on the ground trained his eyes on Su Ming. His gaze was profound and his words were spoken in a strange rhythm. Su Ming instantly felt a mighty willpower coming forth from the man's eyes. In an instant, it touched his outspread divine sense, turning into a force that caused him to stagger. However, the man immediately pulled back his divine sense, so Su Ming was not harmed. A thought appeared in Su Ming's head and he slowly took the straw hat down, revealing a face covered by a black mask. That mask belonged to Han Mountain's ancestor. Although he was wearing a mask, Su Ming's eyes also shone with profundity. The unique presence he gained after he reached the bone sacrifice realm was also clearly reflected on his body, even though he did not show his real face. That profound gaze, the floating spirit plunder, and the divine sense that was spread around his body caused the Su Ming now to look as if he was truly a medial soul catcher. At that moment, his presence became rather similar to the man's on the turtle. This was a similarity that was only possible between soul catchers. Even if the old berserker now had his body controlled, he could still see how Su Ming looked like at that moment. Even if his heart was filled with terror, he still could not help but have this thought appear in his head. Could it be, he's really a soul catcher? Interesting, I can sense the presence of a berserker, a shaman, and an immortal on you. The man whose hair was 10 feet long was actually an incredibly handsome man. Even if he had those age spots which belonged to the elderly, they did not destroy his good looks. Instead, they gave him a charm brought by age. "You're the first person whom I can't figure out on sight. Tell just which race you belong to. You're like a soul catcher, and if other shamans looked at you, they would think you were a soul catcher as well. But you're not a soul catcher. Take off your mask." The man shook his head slightly and commanded leisurely. Su Ming's heart pounded against his chest. When the man's words echoed by his ears, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes and he did something bold. Han Mountain Bell was inside him, and within Han Mountain Bell was that strange rod snake. Su Ming had once released that rod snake during battle in the war, and it had also pierced through the old berserker's palm. He could still remember clearly that the snake had swallowed the illusionary candle dragon that appeared once the young soul catcher opened his eyes. Su Ming had clearly sensed the rod snake's excitement and desire the instant it devoured the candle dragon. Su Ming did not take down the mask, but instead poured all his thoughts into the black stone fragment hanging below his throat. This was his last resort, entering the strange dimension to escape all dangers. However, there were drawbacks in doing this. This was Su Ming's greatest secret, and unless he absolutely needed to, he did not want to use it. At the same time he began making preparations to activate the stone, Su Ming opened up a small crack on the Han Mountain Bell contained in his body and released the strange rod snake's presence. That presence instantly surrounded Su Ming's entire body. However, that presence was clearly very weak, so there were not many who managed to notice it. Only the natural instincts of the ferocious beasts allowed them to notice it, and only some people with unique senses could sense it. Almost the instant the presence spread from Su Ming's body, all the mackerel pikes in the sky let out piercing shrieks and retreated simultaneously. Terror appeared on their faces, as if they had just sensed something terrifying. They were not the only ones reacting that way. All the creatures on the ground were acting in the same manner. Even the 9 turtle beasts that were 100,000 feet in size also started trembling furiously. 8 among the 9 started roaring, and those roars did not sound as if they were fighting against something, but were instead roars of terror. The turtle underneath the long-haired man did not roar, but it was shivering incessantly. The long-haired man sitting on it was stunned and his eyes became as wide as saucers. Dark light shone within his eyes and he stared fixedly at Su Ming. Gradually, his expression changed. "Candle Dragon. I am a medial soul catcher from Lizard Shaman tribe traveling through the land of the shamans. Ever since I was born, I already possessed the presence of the Candle Dragon. Senior, you are a soul catcher, you should be able to tell whether this presence is real or fake. I'm not taking off my mask for personal reasons. Please don't make this hard for me." Su Ming spoke slowly and calmly. In the time he spoke and spread out the rod snake's presence, he completed activating the path to the dimension in the stone. He could enter it any time he wanted now. Uproars rose all around them. As the creatures roared, the shamans standing on them started looking at Su Ming differently. To them, besides the mask, he was identical from his head to toe, including his eyes, to the terrifying soul catchers they'd met before. Even the soul catchers standing in the crowd underneath had the same feeling. The long-haired man stared at Su Ming for a few moments before he said languidly, "Our fellow tribesmen from Lizard Shaman tribe, we are now in a time of war. Don't leave now. Join Autumn Sea tribe and become our tribe's soul catcher." Su Ming frowned. "I can join you, but you must give that person to me. I want to turn him into a puppet and grant him the status of an undying." Chapter 368. Blood of the Shamans. Autumn Sea tribe was one of the larger tribes in the land of the shamans. This migrating group was just a part of it. The team was so long that from afar they looked as if they were connected together. They traveled close to each other, and there were also a large amount of gigantic ferocious beasts dragging with them some unique-looking buildings with the members of Autumn Sea tribe sitting on them as they slowly moved forward. There were thousands of mackerel pikes swimming in the sky, and they looked as if they had blotted out the sky. Whistling sounds reverberated in the air, and there were also quite a large number of these mackerel pikes who spread out around the perimeter as if patrolling the area. Su Ming sat on top of a turtle that was 100,000 feet in size. There were 9 members of Autumn Sea tribe sitting around him. The levels of cultivation of these 9 people were anything but ordinary. All of them were medial shamans. They had Su Ming surrounded in the middle as if they were flanking him. It was an order from the male end shaman. There was a person lying beside Su Ming, the old berserker. He could not move his body, but his mind remained clear. His heart was filled with shock from what he had seen previously. He had originally not believed that Su Ming was a soul catcher, but the progression of events had made him hesitant. By that point, he was already completely uncertain as to who Su Ming was. Su Ming remained silent as he sat on the turtle. His expression was calm and not a hint of what he truly felt in his heart could be seen. He was sitting on the second of the 9 turtles. The first turtle right before was the male end shaman's ride. From where Su Ming was, he could see the long-haired man whose back was turned towards him as he sat on the first turtle in the distance. That length of hair was something Su Ming had never seen before. He was also the first ever end shaman Su Ming had ever seen before. When he remembered that an end shaman had the power equivalent to those who had attained great completion in the Berserker Soul realm, Su Ming's pupils shrank. How many end shamans are there among the shamans? There can't be a lot of them. It's just like how there are very few berserkers who have attained great completion in the Berserker Soul realm. Su Ming's understanding towards end shamans and berserkers who had attained great completion in the Berserker Soul realm was very limited. This was simply too far away to him. It was just one gaze, and he already made a berserker in the initial stage of the Berserker Soul stage almost break down, and then he captured him just like that. The strength of an end shaman should be considered as the peak in the land of South Morning. End shaman. I wonder what his name is. He must be a famous person in the shaman and berserker tribes. Without bringing any attention to himself, Su Ming started examining his surroundings. The tribe was not moving quickly. When dusk arrived, the migrating tribe started slowing down. The members of Autumn Sea tribe started setting up beast skin tents and building up bonfires skillfully on the desolate land. Everything was done in an orderly manner and there was not a hint of them scrambling about in their actions. It was as if everyone knew exactly what they had to do. When dusk went by and the sky turned completely dark, the bonfires lit up the area. Even if they were a migrating tribe that was resting at that moment, the area which they occupied was still very large. At the very least, when Su Ming stood up and looked into the distance, he could only vaguely see the end of the line and was unable to determine just how big was this temporary tribal village. The moon gradually peeked out from the clouds, and firelight flickered on the ground. Even though it was dark in the distance, the tribe was rather well illuminated. There were some children playing around. Occasionally, playful laughter would ring in the air. Gradually, as the members of Autumn Sea tribe brought out food and some of them started roasting meat over the bonfires, the aromatic scent of food filled the air, and bustling sounds permeated the air. Su Ming sat beside a bonfire and took in everything. If he did not look at the tattoos, he could even have a false impression that he was not sitting among shamans, but among berserkers. It did not matter whether it was their food or their manner of living, everything between the two races were too similar. The only differences between them were their divine abilities and their arts. As Su Ming fell into a daze, he saw 3 children about 7 or 8 years of age on the other side of the bonfire. They wore beast skins and their hair was a little messy. They were playing tag. One of the children had big eyes and rosy cheeks. He looked very adorable. The boy was running in front with cheerful laughter. His 2 friends chased after him. The 2 of you are too slow. I'll count to 3. If you still can't catch up to me, then I won't let you 2 play with this rattle drum. The boy running in front held a round-shaped rattle drum with a handle connecting to the drum in his hand. However, the ground was not flat, and as he turned his head around to talk, he tripped over something and instantly fell to the ground. When he fell, his 2 friends behind him immediately caught up to him, and the 3 of them instantly started playing together. However, as the 3 of them played around, squabbling sounds started, causing Su Ming to look over. It's your fault. You broke the rattle drum. It's your fault. My papa made this for me. You have to give it back. The boy who had fallen down previously had his head lowered at that moment and looked as if he was about to cry. The rattle drum he held in his hands now had a tear on it. The 2 other children standing before him looked hurt and angry. The 3 of them started yelling at each other. Things like this occasionally happened among children. Most of the shamans around chose to ignore this when such arguments happened. Compared to the innocence of the children, the adult shamans were feeling heavy-hearted, because before long, they would also have to join the battle, and perhaps in the end, very few of them would survive. Su Ming looked at the three children and stared at the toy rattle in that boy's hand before he stood up slowly. The instant he got up, the 9 medial shamans surrounding him instantly trained their gazes on him, and guarded looks appeared in their eyes. Su Ming ignored those 9 gazes trained on him and started walking towards the 3 squabbling children. The 9 medial shamans frowned at Su Ming's actions. One of them that was in between Su Ming and the 3 children stood up when he started walking over. He stared at Su Ming and was just about to open his mouth when his vision blurred. When the world before him became clear once again, he had already lost sight of Su Ming. That person was momentarily stunned, before he turned his head around swiftly and saw Su Ming with his back towards him as he walked towards the 3 children. As that person's expression changed, the other 8 reacted in the same manner. Just as all of them wanted to close in on Su Ming, they saw him arriving beside the 3 children. He stopped and crouched down. "Let me see. Maybe I can repair it." Su Ming may have been wearing a mask, but the gentle look in his eyes and the soft tone in his voice was still as clear as day. The 3 children were stunned, then looked at Su Ming with wide eyes. "Uncle, can you repair the rattle drum? My papa made it for me. It's his fault that it's broken. Uncle, please repair it. It's my fault that it's broken." Behind Su Ming, the 9 medial shamans who wanted to get closer came to an abrupt halt. They had heard Su Ming's words and seen his actions. Su Ming took the small rattle drum from the boy's hands and examined it. At that instant, nostalgia appeared in his eyes. The similarities between the shaman and berserker tribes had caused even the children's toys to almost be the same. For example, this rattle drum. Su Ming remembered that his elder had made one for him when he was young. It was a small rattle drum made using beast skins, and there was a small stone tied to both sides of the drum with strings made of straw. If he held it in his hand and turned his wrist a little, the small stones wrapped up in string would hit the surface of the drum and let out rattling sounds. This was one of Su Ming's favorite toys when he was young. He looked at the rattle drum in his hand and a smile appeared on his face under the mask. One side of the drum was torn, which was why no sound could be produced. Su Ming lifted his hand and ripped off the torn beast skin, then ripped off a corner of the boy's shirt, then placed it on the drum once again. Once he fixed it in place, he turned his wrist with the drum in hand, and instantly, rattling sounds appeared in the air. The 3 children immediately started cheering, and excited looks appeared on their faces. Once they took the repaired rattle drum from Su Ming, 2 of them looked at each other, then ran into the distance excitedly. "Uncle, thank you. I'm Abu." The boy who had previously broken the rattle drum when he fell waved at Su Ming and happily ran off to join his friends. At that moment, Su Ming was not paying any mind to the blood feud between the shamans and the berserkers in the land of South Morning. Neither was he paying any attention to the war between both sides that would last for an unknown period of time next to Sky Mist City. He looked at the innocent children and sighed. "Brother Mo, I didn't expect that you would help the children repair the rattle drum. You must have seen your past self in them." A cheerful voice came from behind Su Ming. Along with those words came a young man dressed in a black robe with long hair that went down to his waist. The young man's skin was fair, and there was a tattoo of a mackerel pike at the center of his brows. He looked slightly different compared to the other shamans. Most of the time, the shamans' tattoos covered their entire face, but this person's tattoo only covered the center of his brows. There was not a single hint of a tattoo anywhere else on his face. He walked from afar, and as he got closer, respect appeared on the faces of the 9 medial shamans who were keeping close watch on Su Ming. The young man lifted his hand and waved at them, and the 9 people quickly backed away. "The past is no longer here." Su Ming turned around and cast the young man a flat look. "The past may be gone, but we have to keep a tight grip of the present, because what you do know will decide your future." The young man also looked at Su Ming, but with a faint smile on his lips. At that moment, their gazes met. "I am Mu, a medial soul catcher from Autumn Sea Tribe." The young man spoke with a smile, then turned his gaze away from Su Ming, sitting down at a bonfire. "Brother Mo, care to have a drink?" As the young man spoke, someone behind him immediately took a few brisk steps forward and placed 2 pots of wine by his side before backing down respectfully. Su Ming sat down nearby and shook his head. The young man brought up a wine pot and took a large swig from it once he opened it. Then he let out a long breath. The young man placed the wine pot down, then said, seemingly casually, "Brother Mo, you came from the battlefield, right?" "Why do you say that?" Su Ming asked calmly. "I can smell the blood of shamans on you. There must have been plenty of shamans who died in your hands, you, who also happen to be the true divinity wind berserker." The young man spoke slowly, but the moment he said those words, it was as if a chill hand closed in on Su Ming from within the bustling tribe. Chapter 369, Nine Li Shaman Tribe. Su Ming remained calm. His expression did not change at all due to the young man's words. It was as if he did not hear him at all. "Perhaps I should be calling you Brother Su, and not Brother Mo." When the young man saw Su Ming reacting this way, he spoke once again, still with a slow tone. Su Ming smiled faintly and lifted his head to look at the mackerel pikes swimming about in the dark sky. With a glint in his eyes, he took off the mask on his face, placed it by his side and took a big swig from the wine pot at his side. The instant he took off the mask, all the 9 previously retreating medial shamans immediately took a few steps forward and stood around them. Their expressions changed and murderous intent shone in their eyes, but they did not attack. The young man's eyes were instantly trained on Su Ming, like lightning when he saw his sudden movements. He stared at Su Ming's pale face and the scar under his eyes, and after a long while, he let out a cold harumph. "You killed many of my tribesmen, and the thickness of the smell of shaman blood on you can be detected leagues away. How dare you sit so brazenly among us? Do you not believe that with just one command from me, your head will immediately fall to the ground and your soul will instantly scatter? Do you believe that before my head falls to the ground, I won't drag you to hell with me? Do you believe that once my head falls to the ground, your Autumn Sea tribe won't find it incredibly hard to even walk down the land of the shamans?" Su Ming brought up the wine pot and drank another mouthful before he cast the young man a flat look. "Do you not believe that perhaps my head will not even fall to the ground?" The young man stared at Su Ming, then suddenly started chuckling after a long while. His chuckles were not loud, but as he started chuckling, the cold look in his eyes disappeared. "Su Ming, oh Su Ming, this is the first time we met, but you already gave me a lot of surprises. I didn't expect that you, a member of the Berserker tribe, would repair a rattle drum for the children of my race. I also didn't expect that once I exposed your real identity, you would turn the tables and threaten me when we are in my tribe. Do you know that your name has already spread to all the Berserkers? Even if Sky Mist City has issued a gag order, the things that happened that day cannot be hidden away. True Divinity Wind Berserker, True Divinity Lightning Berserker, and you even obtained a part of the legacy belonging to the first god of Berserkers. You, who possesses the power of the god of Berserkers, have already caught the attention of all the powerful Berserkers in the land of the Berserkers. At the same time, you have also caught the attention of many powerful shamans." Su Ming did not speak. He simply continued drinking. The instant he was exposed, his heart had indeed been in turmoil, but he soon calmed down. There were many mysteries that could not be explained clearly about this matter, such as why he was allowed to stay in the tribe and why the young man said all these things even though he had no obligation to tell him about them. However, once the young man said his piece, Su Ming began to have a vague understanding about the situation. "I've always been curious about why there were only one shaman and one berserker who chased after me when I left Sky Mist City that day, and why I didn't run into any other shamans on the way, but at the very last moment, I encountered all of you. Now, I understand it somewhat." Su Ming put the wine pot down and looked at the young man sitting before him, then he said, "Thank you for this." The young man's pupils shrank, but he shook his head after a long while and sighed. "It's so boring. I originally thought your expression would change slightly or you would react in an extreme fashion, but I didn't expect that you would remain so calm." "That's right. My people are fighting on the battlefield now. Our sacred lady is also there. She was the one who created the chance for you to escape in secret. She warded off the other powerful shamans from other tribes chasing you down. There's also someone helping you in secret from Sky Mist City. That's why there were only 2 people who came after you in the end. You ran into us because the thought soothsayers from my tribe have predicted your arrival. You can say that you didn't find us, but we were waiting for you." The young man spoke slowly as he looked at Su Ming. Su Ming fell silent. After a long while, the young man frowned and asked, "Do you know the reason?" "The reason is because you're our shaman lord's junior brother." The person who said those words was not the young man, but an old woman who was walking slowly towards them and was speaking in a raspy voice. That old woman was the end shaman from Autumn Sea tribe Su Ming had seen during the day. When the old woman showed up, the 9 medial shamans around them immediately knelt down on one knee. Their expressions were filled with intense respect and zeal. Even Ya Mu, who was by Su Ming's side, immediately stood up and bowed towards her respectfully. A very long time ago, before the land of the Berserkers was divided into 5 portions, there was a powerful tribe to the south. The leader of the tribe was so strong that his power was at an equal level to the second god of Berserkers. That tribe was called 9 Li. Something happened between the leader of 9 Li and the second god of Berserkers during that time. We can no longer look into it, but as their descendants, we only know that when the second god of Berserkers was killed by the immortals in the other worlds, he was cut into pieces, and once the land of the Berserkers was divided, 9 Li tribe was also divided and scattered. When the leader of 9 Li died, he left behind a will declaring that the tribe's Berserkers would be hence known as shamans. A large amount of these people gradually increased in number and developed into small tribes in the land of South Morning. They called themselves shamans, and they are the members of the shaman tribe you see today. We shamans are the descendants of the 9 Li tribe, and we keep the blood of 9 Li pure in wait for the blood descendant of our shaman lord to awaken the power that belongs to the 9 Li. However, during the long span of time we waited for the descendant of our shaman lord to awaken, a part of the shamans have changed. They gave up on the glory of the 9 Li and contacted the immortals who came from the other worlds. They are no longer shamans. They're not fit to be called shamans who will not bow to any authority in the world. They are the lapdogs of immortals of the other worlds. We saved you because your eldest senior brother is the shaman lord of 9 Li in this generation. He has arranged for one of 9 Li's 300 shaman souls to be by your side. You are an honored guest of 9 Li shaman tribe. The old woman's voice was ancient and it fell into Su Ming's ears. As he listened to her words, he was shaken. He lowered his head and looked at the bracelet on his wrist. With a single thought, the bracelet immediately turned into black smoke. That black smoke instantly spread and merged together to form a woman's body before him. The woman gradually gained form. Once her body was completely revealed, she swept her gaze across the old woman and the surroundings with her back turned towards Su Ming. Which faction of 9 Li tribe do you belong to? For the first time, the woman spoke. Her voice was aloof, and there was a chilling quality to it. Autumn Sea tribe. The instant the old woman saw the woman, excitement appeared on her face. She wrapped her fist in her palm and bowed to her. She was not the only who did so. All the shamans around the area immediately prostrated themselves before her. By the orders of our young lord, we are to provide the greatest amount of help we can provide to a certain amount of people in all the tribes that belong to 9 Li shaman tribe before the catastrophe of the eastern wastelands comes to us. In the previous battle, we've already sent the news to the shamans, but almost all of them no longer have the blood of 9 Li flowing through their veins. The immortals from the other worlds have descended upon us 3 times within the past 100 years. Each time they come to us, there would be traitors who would ally themselves to them to obtain the skill to reach immortality by offering their blood right to them. It is especially so now, with the arrival of the catastrophe of the eastern wastelands. The ancient legends are beginning to show exactly what they meant, and many more of those from 9 Li shaman tribe have surrendered their blood right to become affiliates of the immortals of the other realms. The battle this time was started by the tribes who have affiliated themselves to the immortals. The few tribes who still have the blood of 9 Li coursing in our veins will face the danger of extermination if we don't follow their orders and send our warriors to war. Young lord, please come back and bring us back to the path of 9 Li. With an agitated face, the old woman knelt down. Su Ming's breathing quickened. He suddenly realized that the originally rowdy Autumn Sea tribe in the area where he stood had become silent. Those from further away might not be looking towards them, but Su Ming had a faint feeling that this area had turned into the center of the attention for tens of thousands of members of the Autumn Sea tribe. Right now, there are less than 3 years left before the Immortals' 4th descent within this century. This time, there will be more factions of 9 Li shaman tribes choosing to join them. After all, the temptation of breaking through the end is one that all end shamans cannot resist. It is especially so after the people have seen just how strong a hollow shaman is after the great patriarch made his choice in the past. From what we could tell, the immortals have also descended 3 times within this century among the berserkers. It is only logical to assume that there is quite a large number of berserkers who have come into contact with them as well. In fact, we have our suspicions that Sky Mist City no longer belongs to the berserkers. The old woman spoke quickly, as if she wanted to use this chance to tell everything that she knew to their shaman lord through this shaman soul of 9 Li. Su Ming sucked in a sharp breath. The old woman's words had delivered a great shock to him. We believe that Sky Mist City is fighting against the shaman tribes that have affiliated themselves to the immortals from the other worlds because they belong to 2 or 3 different factions of power among those immortals. Shaman Lord, what should we do? The old woman asked hastily. The woman formed by the black smoke continued to stay silent. Su Ming was also silent. He had a sudden feeling that Autumn Sea Tribe saved him in secret and allowed him to stay in their tribe so that they could have a chance to speak to his eldest senior brother. It was not because of Su Ming himself that they did so. When he remembered his eldest senior brother, Su Ming could not help but be reminded of his master. The 9 Li shaman soul formed by the black smoke still remained silent. Suddenly, a calm voice floated towards them from afar. Those words were uttered in an indescribable rhythm. That voice was very pleasant to the ears, but at the same time, it also contained a feeling as if it was trying to stun souls. As that voice echoed around, it made all those who heard it feel buzzing sounds going off in their heads. Even the 9 Li shaman soul Su Ming's eldest senior brother had given him looked as if it was about to scatter under the power of that voice. Tell the shaman lord that if he still hasn't made a choice, that I, Zhongzi, whose life has almost ended, will choose to surrender my blood right in exchange for a chance to break through the end. If I succeed, if I am no longer myself. When that voice reached this point, it paused for a moment before it turned into a sigh. Su Ming knew who exactly that voice belonged to, that end soul catcher. Chapter 370. That woman standing on the mackerel pike. As that end soul catcher sighed, the entire Autumn Sea tribe in that temporary tribal village fell into dead silence. Time trickled by slowly. That dead silence turned into a depressive feeling that pressed on all of their hearts, including Su Ming's. Su Ming had more than once made assumptions regarding his eldest senior brother's origins, but it was only now that he truly understood his eldest senior brother's identity. The lord of 9 Li shaman tribe. Right when that depressing feeling became stronger, ripples spread out from the black smoke coming from the female 9 Li shaman soul. Soon after, a voice Su Ming was familiar with came from within, as if it had traveled a long distance through those ripples. Before the immortals of the other worlds descend upon us for the 4th time, I will come. The instant that voice spoke, almost all the people in Autumn Sea tribe heard it clearly, and all of them prostrated themselves on the ground. Even the mackerel pikes in the sky howled because of that one sentence, causing the dark sky to look as if it had turned into a black sea that was raging with furious waves. Please accept our greetings, Lord of 9 Li. The waves of sound merged together and turned into one voice. That voice only started disappearing slowly after a long while. Youngest junior brother, don't come back to the land of the berserkers for the time being. Su Ming's eldest senior brother's voice spoke from within the female 9 Li shaman soul, and once he finished saying those words, his voice gradually disappeared. The female 9 Li shaman soul's body also started scattering away to return to Su Ming's wrist. It returned to the form of a bracelet, but the color of the bracelet had become much duller. It was clear that this sort of conversation, even though only 2 sentences had been delivered, was not an easy task. At that moment, all the shamans around Su Ming gradually started rising up from the ground. The old woman cast him a look and no longer paid any attention to him. Instead, she turned around and left. It was as if she had come here just to prove Su Ming right. She was only there to gain a chance to speak to the shaman lord of 9 Li. As for the 9 medial shamans that had stayed beside Su Ming all this while, they seemed to have received a new order and left the area, no longer paying any attention to him. Only Ya Mu remained in the area while giving Su Ming a smile. He picked up the wine jar and took a big swig from it. Great. Now the old folks are all gone. There's no else here who will restrict your movements anymore. Brother Su, you can leave at any time you want. If you don't want to leave, You can also stay here. It'll be better for you, too. Just, what exactly is the descent of the immortals from the other worlds? Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he, too, picked up the wine jar. Once he took a big swig from it, he looked at Mu. They're naturally the immortals who come from a foreign world. They use a unique method to come to our world. The immortal spells are different from ours, but all those who can descend among us have incredible power. In fact, they even have a method for our powerful end shamans to break through their current level of cultivation and arrive at Hollow. It can even be said that they have a power for those old monsters who have already attained great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm to reach another realm. This is an irresistible temptation for those old monsters, especially for those whose life is reaching an end. The power of the world that will be activated when they break through to that new realm is a life changer, and it's almost like attaining immortality. It's not just them, even I am tempted by this sort of thing, Mu said with a deep sigh, shrugging. Have you met the immortals before? Su Ming suddenly asked. A glint appeared in Mu's eyes and he replied softly, I have. I've seen 2 immortals before. They were a man and woman. The man was an old man. He came to Autumn Sea Tribe 10 years ago and fought against Sir Zhongzi. Su Ming immediately shot up to attention and listened closely to what Mu said. I can tell the details of what happened in that battle, but their battle lasted less than the time taken for an incense stick to burn. I couldn't see how they attacked in the sky, I only saw a gigantic hand up above. That hand repeatedly clenched its fist 9 times. After those 9 times, that immortal's battle against Sir Zhongzi ended. I saw the old man wearing an incredibly gorgeous robe and walking out of the sky without a word. By the way, there were some pictures sewn on the old man's robes. It was a purple dragon, but the dragon held 4 different items in its claws. One of them was a bottle, the other a pearl, and there was also a small sword. There was another item that was hidden in the clouds, but I couldn't see it. Once the old man left, Sir Zhongzi returned to the tribe from the sky. I remember that he had an incredibly sour face at that time. We were all guessing that perhaps. You know what it is. Ma sighed and drank a mouthful from the wine pot in his hand. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he continued asking. What about the other one? The other one was a woman. A nostalgic look appeared in Mu's eyes. What can I say about her? She didn't look particularly pretty, but anyone who saw her would be unable to forget that her eyes seemed to contain an entire world on their own. She was flying in the sky alone. When I saw her, I could tell at first glance that she was neither a shaman nor a berserker, because that presence was completely different from ours. If you somehow manage to see an immortal, you'll definitely be able to recognize them at first glance. They give off a completely different feeling. Up till now, I can still remember that her expression looked pretty odd when she saw me. It was a look of conflict, pity, and there was even a hint of fear. She seemed to be very afraid of me, but she had gave me a feeling as if I was facing an end shaman based on what I could sense from her power. I still can't understand why there would be terror on her face. Mu drank. As he spoke, he shook his head, as if he still could not understand even now. Su Ming sat nearby and slowly lifted his head to look at the stars flickering in the dark sky. A profound look gradually appeared in his eyes, and once it fused with a unique presence on his currently unmasked face, an indescribable charm slowly manifested about him. Mu put down the wine pot and no longer thought about the woman in his memories. He instinctively cast a glance at Su Ming, but the moment he looked at him, he suddenly shuddered, and his expression changed drastically. You. Mu was momentarily stunned, then sucked in a deep breath. When Su Ming eventually lowered his head and looked towards him, the profound look in his eyes had disappeared and had turned into calmness. Only then was Mu shocked by what he saw and he rubbed his eyes. What's wrong? Su Ming asked. Mu remained silent for a moment before he looked at Su Ming and said slowly, the feeling you gave me just now was the exact same as the old immortal and the female immortal I saw in the past. That's a completely different presence compared to us. Sir Zhongzi is right. There's a fog around you that can't be seen through. If it wasn't because we knew for sure that you are a berserker, then I would definitely think you were a medial soul catcher. If I didn't know about your origins, I would have thought you were an immortal who descended upon us just now. Mu shook his head and chased away the sudden thought that had appeared in his head. He was certain it was impossible. There was no way a true divinity wind berserker would be an immortal. Neither was it possible for an immortal to obtain the legacy of the first god of berserkers. It was the same for the shamans. They wouldn't be able to get those legacies either. An immortal, huh? Su Ming mumbled, and bitterness appeared in his heart. Compared to Mu's misconception, Su Ming's confusion stemmed from the source of his bitterness. It would have been better if he was completely confused by it, but he already had several theories as to why he would feel bitter about it. Those were theories that he did not want to accept, and in fact, could not accept. Where is the location of the spot where the immortals will descend? Approximately when would that be? I also saw a woman with that sort of presence when I was in the battlefield beyond Sky Mist City. Do you know who she is? Where can I find these immortals? Su Ming immediately asked. You're speaking too quickly. The immortals won't descend in another 3 years. I don't know the precise date, but when you see that the sky is still bright even though it should be dark, or when the sky should be bright, but it's dark, then it means that it's time for them to descend. I do know the precise location. They'll be descending on the highest mountain in the land of the shamans, Cloud Shaman Summit. They've been landing there the previous few times. As for the immortal you mentioned that appeared in the battlefield, I don't know who she is, since I've never seen her before, but I do know of a place where you'll definitely be able to see the immortals. That would be where the great patriarch is now, God of Shaman's Temple. It's also on top of Cloud Shaman Summit. As Mu spoke, he stood up. He cast Su Ming a glance, then hesitated for a moment before he brought out a wooden slip from his bosom and handed it to him. By the looks of it, you've chosen to leave. This is a map that covers most of the areas in the land of the shamans. It's an item that only those within Autumn Sea Tribe can have. Take it. It'll be useful to you. Even though we're in a time of war, but there are still dangers lurking around if you travel alone. With your current level of cultivation, well, do your best. Mu shook his head and picked up his wine pot before he left Su Ming. Su Ming took the wooden slip and stood up once he put it away in his bosom. He had indeed chosen to leave. The purpose for him to come to the land of the shamans was not just to find a breakthrough for his level of cultivation through countless life and death battles, but he also wanted to find out exactly what was destiny from those immortals who came to this world. The immortals from the other worlds were going to descend 3 years later. He had to go, but before that, he had many other things to do, be it him creating medicinal pills and refining the old berserker in the berserker soul realm, or even training the arts of the wind berserker and the lightning berserker, and also fusing the crystals of inheritance with himself. He needed time to prepare all of these things. There was also the possibility of the rod snake going through a metamorphosis, and also the unknown medicinal pill in the medicinal cauldron he kept in his body, and he also had to refine Han Mountain Bell now, since his level of cultivation had just increased so that he could master the true power of this priceless treasure. All of these things were pending in wait, and Su Ming had to finish doing all of them. 3 years. 3 years later, I have to become stronger. Determination appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He was just about to leave when his expression suddenly changed and he lifted his head swiftly. At that moment, Mu was still not too far away. Roaring sounds suddenly came from the dark sky, and as the clouds tumbled about in the air, the mackerel pikes in the sky started howling together. Those howls did not seem to be like those that were directed towards enemies, but instead, they sounded like they were welcoming someone, and they simultaneously moved back. A gigantic mackerel pike pushed through the sea of clouds, and it was so huge that its precise size could not be seen. The people below could only see a part of its body that was revealed out of the sea of clouds. That mackerel pike seemed to be treating the sky as its ocean and was drifting towards them. There was a woman holding a bamboo flute standing on its back. That woman's black locks swayed in the air and she wore a white robe. As she got closer, a breathtakingly beautiful face that could make hearts pound came into view.